So how do I get in on some of this de-aging action?
That's a good idea.
Because like 5 years ago, everything's fine. Now
My back.
oh,
Me.
I got the agita.
Everything. Sciatica hurts. Oh.
I'd like to be de-aged. You should do that.
You should do that. Hey, welcome to iFanboy, the comic book discussion show from the website iFanboy.com. I am Josh Flanagan. This is Dance and Ron.
I'm running in place. I'm Ron.
And I'm Connor Kilpatrick. And it's August, and it's the last month.
hot.
It's hot. It's definitely hot. And we're celebrating or mourning the loss of Justice Society of America. This month sees the last issue of the series.
One of the casualties of the DC Relaunch, Reboot, New World Order.
Not only that, but also one of the few books that we all have enjoyed.
I'm a big fan of the JSA.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of the few DC books that you like evangelize or
Yes,
have
really,
in the past.
like aggressively.
Yeah, so we figured since this is the last month, you're going to have a JSA for now.
Yeah.
Question mark.
Basically,
We're
the
going
way
to talk
that it
about
looks
the
is,
history of the book.
You know, Dan DiDio said that they're going to be retiring the concept for a little while, so they're going to take a little break. This
Well,
is
if you
what he
believe
says. That's what he says.
What I believe is that JSA is
done for a while.
They don't see the JSA as the future of comics. They see that as the past.
I can understand that.
Yeah. Or comics for old people.
However, and we are going to get into this, but maybe that is one of its strengths.
I agree.
So let's talk about the history of the JSA. We've talked in the past about characters from the JSA, like Alan Scott. We did a show on recently. These characters appeared in the 40s. Yep. Some of the original superheroes.
Classic superheroes.
So in All-Star Comics number 3, 1940, the JSA first made their appearance. Gardner Fox, the writer, was one of the creators, and Sheldon Mayer, who was an editor. They created the team.
Which is really, I mean, if you think about it, that's the super team.
Yeah.
The Justice Society of America in 1940, that's when it started.
And they were created in order to... They had all the superheroes. They had Superman, Batman, they had Hawkman, they had a Green Lantern, they had Flash.
Atom.
They had the Atom.
They had a table.
And they had to have a way to promote these characters.
Yep.
So we'll put all of our lesser-known characters together in a team, in one book.
At a table.
And that's what they did. And Superman and Batman were honorary members, sort of like get you in the door.
Right.
But they weren't really in the adventures. They're trying to get people to buy them.
hell is Batman?
Superman and Batman super popular.
Right.
Other characters weren't. So
Not everybody was into Hourman or Hawkman.
Right.
And so, yeah.
And that issue, this is actually gets funny. This series lasted till issue 57.
Okay.
With the JSA, and that's 1940 to 1951, 11 years of JSA.
Some good stories.
And then, not selling well, they changed the title to All-Star Western.
Because they just did that.
Which is funny because in these days, the idea of changing a superhero team book to a Western book is mind-blowing. This never happened.
The reason why, and this gets into some of the history, and if you read the 10-Cent Plague, which is a book about that time period, the 1940s in comics and Wortham and stuff like that, comics were published as magazines.
Yep.
And it was a whole bunch of different publishing rules, and there were all these rules about how many titles you could publish and you could distribute. And when they wanted to, if they wanted to end a title and start a new one, they couldn't do that. They'd have to just rename the title to keep the subscriptions going and all stuff like that. So they changed titles of comics like in the late 40s, 1950s, like all the time. They just changed them.
Yeah.
There was one publisher that was like all Bible stories, and they changed the crime, and so they changed from like All American Bible Stories to Crime Doesn't Pay. And it was like wait a minute. Then they kept the numbering.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
So All-Star Western 58 was the issue, but it's interesting, like in this day and age, to change from a superhero book to a Western book in comics would never happen these
I'd
days.
love to see that.
And that was the whole sea change in the time period where the superheroes went away, and then they come back in the Silver Age, which we don't see a JSA character in a comic book from 1951 to 1961 and then Flash makes his appearance. Jay Garrick makes his appearance, and that's the first time you've seen a JSA character. So it's been 10 years.
And at the time, I mean, that moment when the Flash appeared and when they had the two Flashes, when Barry Allen and Jay Garrick met, that was another landmark kind of moment because it was the merging of the two ages and started all of DC's problems with multiple Earths and things like that. But
so then
you call them problems.
Right.
I call them features.
So in 1963, the JSA come back, reform in it with a comic.
On Earth 2, right?
They became the Earth 2 heroes. That's the whole mess became Flash.
So Earth 1 was the Justice League and Earth 2 was the JSA.
And they had their annual crossovers. But from 1963 to 1985, you had 3 books featuring JSA characters. You had All-Star Squadron, you had Infinity Inc., which featured them and their kids, and you had All-Star Comics. And so in that time period, that's the Earth 2 years, 63 to 85 for the JSA. So they're they're still sort of second fiddle to the Justice League.
Yeah, I always feel like up until more recent time, but during that time period, there was like this legacy that like this kind of baggage that they carried, these kind of like older versions of these other more exciting characters. Jay Garrick had gray hair, and Alan Scott was older, and
Their uniforms were billowy.
Yeah,
But the thing is, I liked them because I used to buy those Bronze Age books.
Yeah.
As a kid, when I go to the comic store, I wouldn't buy new books. I'd go to the back issue bin. I'd buy old JLA books, and they would always cross over.
Yep.
For some reason, I always bought those because they had the cover with all the faces down the
Yeah, I
sides.
love the faces
So I
on the
figured,
cover.
I'm getting all these characters, so I'd
Right.
buy those. And in that sense, that's when I fell in love with the JSA, and it was in the 80s when I bought those issues.
I went back and read it was All Star Squadron or All Star Comics, the one that Roy Thomas did in the late 70s.
Squadron, I think.
All Star Squadron. I love those books.
Yeah.
Those are great.
You've been buying those.
Yeah. I'm getting the whole run.
So then Crisis comes. So we have our first
Crisis.
DC
On Infinite Earth.
event reboot, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and in that, so when the worlds merge, they take all the multiple Earths into one. That's when the JSA becomes the World War II heroes, because originally they were contemporary of Batman and Superman because they were all in the 40s, they were all just around.
Yeah.
In this instance, they say, okay, the JSA were in World War II. They inspired all the modern heroes. That's how they fit into the timeline. So they weren't World War II heroes in the sense that you know them now as the people who started off the superhero business until '85. Now, that also means they went away. They weren't featured. You didn't see them in a book again for 6 more years. In 1991, they brought them back in a miniseries, an 8-issue miniseries, which took place in the past. Still not modern day heroes. This was this was what they did in the 50s. This
was a little retro throwback kind of thing. Yeah.
But
I'd buy that if it came out today.
Yeah, that was somewhat popular. So in '92, they tried a new ongoing. And I remember being so excited for this when I was a kid.
Those characters.
I liked the characters,
Yeah.
and Mike Parabek was the artist who I loved. He had that animated style.
Oh, I don't even know him. Who's he?
He was a really famous artist. He died of cancer when he was young. He did all the Batman animated books. He had that animated style. He drew like Darwin Cook.
Yeah.
And so he came on the book. I think Len Wein was the writer.
That makes sense, yeah.
And so it was a new ongoing.
Yeah.
Lasted 10 issues.
That's it?
Not popular at all.
Well, we always talk about how like they're so quick to cancel the books now.
That's how bad it must have been selling.
I know, especially in this '92.
Yeah.
So that was like the high.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
So but you had two things going for it. I think the characters weren't
Give me
popular.
50 covers of this. You want that? Ugh.
The characters weren't popular at the time. The animated style wasn't popular at the time.
Yep.
Even though that was when the cartoon was happening, still in the comics it wasn't. We talked to Darwin about this. You couldn't break into comics at the time because the style wasn't popular.
Yeah.
So you had all these things happening, and I was heartbroken when the book was canceled. I have the issues somewhere. So then, in 1994, they just killed them again. They just killed them off in 0 hour. They said, we don't have these characters. We got to raise the stakes. Let's kill off all
We're not
these.
using them. Let's kill them.
So they were killed, but then they were also in the comics world. They were sent to another dimension.
yeah, weren't they like put in a pocket?
Well, they died, but then it was revealed that they were in another dimension. That's how they came back.
Right,
But so they brought back in '92. The book failed. They killed them in '94. 5 years go by without a JSA book.
Yep.
99, and this is where you guys come in.
Yep.
James Robinson, David Goyer, and eventually Jeff Johns, who comes in like the third issue, reboots the JSA title, which to go along with the JLA title.
Which was awesome because it was like taking those legacy characters and pairing them up with some modern characters that were continuing the mantle. So instead of having the Wesley Dodds Sandman, you had Sand, who was his ward.
Was the old sidekick, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the old sidekick. I forget his real name, but he had the gas mask and he looked like Grifter. But
So you still had Alan Scott, and you still had Jay Garrick, you still had
Wildcat.
You still had
Ted Grant.
Ted Grant. But you also had the legacy character. You had Stargirl showed up in that
Stargirl.
issue.
You had Sand. You had
There was a new Dr. Fate.
There was a new light. There was the lightning guy that was later on.
Johnny Thunder.
Johnny Thunder. Yeah. So what it was is it was this great bridge between the historical books that we knew, the characters that we knew and loved, but with their legacies continue with new and younger characters, and it had a lot of energy.
Yep.
And who did the art on it back then? I really liked the art.
Sadowski.
Yeah,
Steven
it was
Sadowski.
really good. It was
Alan Davis did the covers. Steven Sadowski did the art inside.
Yeah.
You had James Robinson, who loves these characters writing it. In the very beginning, he wrote a couple of issues, and then, of course, the natural handoff is to his protege, Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
And this is one of his first major books.
I remember the logo got me, like the JSA logo.
Well, what's interesting is that, I mean, we're going to talk about James Robinson. Like, he's the reason who I know who they are. He's the guy who got me interested in them via
Through
the Golden
Starman.
Age, and it's mostly Starman, which actually, it was before this. So
Yeah, so they were appearing in that book, but they weren't appearing in and they were also dead. They were in the dead
but they
world.
were still part of the history because everybody referred to them.
No, they were still World War II characters. They just didn't have their own book.
Right.
Well, and Starman was originally a member of the JSA, the original Starman
Right.
with the fin and the
Yeah.
rod, and so his Starman was the first legacy character to take on a mantle. And
I truly think that if you look back at A, the Golden Age, and B, in Starman, like Robinson established that through line that Jeff Johns used later in his JSA run to sort of work that legacy. Like there's a line that goes from these heroes from the 40s right up to today, and that's what's really strong about the DCU.
Yeah.
And the thing about the JLA versus the JSA is the JLA I always look at like a job, like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman.
They get together.
They cut together because only they can deal with those threats, stuff like that. Whereas the JSA is a family.
I look at it like it's the Kiwanis Club.
And they live together.
Yeah, but they live together. They have the big table. They have the house. They got Ma, like the brownstone.
What's funny is that first book I dropped off at some point. Like towards the end, I got kind of like, it's been long. It went for 6 years, 7 years.
I didn't get into it right when it launched. I didn't read issues. It was one of the first books that I picked up in trade in the early 2000s. I remember
that. Yeah.
I remember jury duty, and I'm like, I need something to read. And I went to the comic store. And I got out of order. Like I didn't because they weren't doing numbering and so I was like, this is fantastic. I'm like, this is great. So.
I came back for they relaunched the book. They didn't stop the book basically. They just continued, but they changed the name. They restarted with the number 1 called Justice Society of America because at the time there was a Justice League of America. They're keeping the branding similar, and that book's been. So basically, if you take this book as one book, which kind of was, from '99 to 2011, there's been one long JSA run, and anchored mostly by Jeff Johns.
Yeah, and the Jeff Johns Justice Society of America
was fantastic.
We loved.
I hadn't read any of the JSA stuff before that, and I was kind of like, you guys. I remember you guys. And I started reading. It is really
Dale
good.
Eaglestrom did art on the art.
Eaglestrom at his best, I think, that we've seen, and just the 30 characters, like they just kept on adding G members, and it was
Crazy Starman.
But like there was such an emotional backbone to that.
Yeah.
It was like Jeff Johns at his like what Jeff Johns does when he pulls at your heartstrings, and
He's perfect for that scene.
He really did a tight walk on the tone in that book, I thought, and that goes back through all these, but like it was a little bit less hard-edged, I guess, than a lot of modern comics, if that makes sense.
No, it totally was.
So it was a little bit of a throwback, but not so much that people couldn't get into it. Like he really...
But it was also very violent and very bloody.
Yeah, he very much walked that line, and I think that when he left and they switched the teams over...
And it fell completely apart.
Lost that, and then all the things that had made those characters not popular, for lack of a better word, sort of resurfaced again, and it's because it had been missing that edge. And so then you had all these characters and everything, but it just like it takes a very deft hand to get that tone.
Right.
I think.
So now in this new world order that we got coming up in a couple of weeks, they don't exist anymore.
There's no Justice Society.
There's no Justice Society.
I think Superman's the first superhero in the
yeah,
DC
I've heard that as well.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Are you okay with that?
It's yes, because I'm looking forward to this whole new world. But I think
it's a whole new world.
It's sad because I like the characters, but I have a lot of JSA stories I can reread.
Well, the thing is,
and also I haven't been reading JSA for at least 3 years because it hasn't been good. So they've already been out of my head for a while.
And the thing also I think is important to note is that the world has not had a JSA book before.
A lot.
Like how long? Like you did the math.
It's been 71 years since the JSA debuted.
It's a long time.
And out of that 71 years, there's been 24 years without a JSA book. So people, I see when they announce it, and I'm completely valid to be sad about it because I love the characters too, but people saying you can't have comics of the JSA that you can.
They did for 24 years.
24 of the 70 years there have been no JSA comics.
So there's a gap of 12 years, a gap of 6, another gap of 6. Yeah.
From the 90s to 99. From the early 90s and the late 90s, there was no JSA.
And so in 2015, when they relaunched JSA again, you'll be,
Well, the thing that's interesting is that in DC, the JSA's been around for a while, but there's a shared world, but the JSA never really seemed to be present in any of the other stuff going on.
Well, the thing about the JSA is that they've never been the catalyst or the solution to major change. They've had their own.
They've got their own stories, and that's fine. And actually, if you look at Jeff Johns' most recent run, the part that was the least good was when they crossed over with the JLA.
Yeah, true.
And you were like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And so.
Oh, that whole with the Legion, with Meltzer's.
It didn't work out all that well.
Yeah.
And
they brought Barry back to that.
So in a way, they were kind of never really there.
Yeah.
Like there was a book, but
they've always been part of it.
In the big event, they're in the back. They're in the background.
Yeah, I mean, the characters are.
Yeah, they're never
Mr.
really.
Terrific was off running Checkmate, and Power Girl was
and
there.
Mr. Terrific will still be around. He's got his own book.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Just less characters for George Perez to draw when he does the cover or something.
But if you do have a continuity where they weren't around in the 40s, I think that they lose a lot of their
legacy.
Purpose.
Yep.
That's the thing that makes them interesting. It's like taking away Captain America from the
Cap was a Vietnam hero.
Well, that's the one that
changes everything.
like, especially as a Flash fan, like I love the Jay Garrick, Barry Allen, Wally West, Bart Allen, Max Mercury, Jesse Quick family. That's gone. That's completely gone. It's completely gone.
Yeah.
And I'm going to miss that. You know?
This also hasn't been a factor in like 5, 6, 7 years.
Because nobody's used it well since Jeff used it. You know, since Johns and Wade used it. But
I think the people and a lot of people, I think the last real big influx of readers happened in the early 2000s. I think that's like the last time we had a lot of people come in. A lot of people who come to the website started reading around that time period.
Yeah.
They don't know of a world without the JSA, whereas now, I know at least half my comic reading life there's been no JSA book.
And now the other thing is, because we don't know, because we haven't read the books yet, and we've seen some trickles of art and things like that over the past couple weeks. But what we don't know about does it just mean it's just Jay Garrick, Wildcat, Alan Scott? Like, what about Stargirl? What about the younger generation? And DC has been very vague about who exists. And there was no Power Girl title, but they said Power Girl is in the world. So the younger JSA characters might come back, just not as the JSA.
And the thing is, you can always. Jeff Johns brought them into Smallville.
Yeah.
And in the Smallville world, there were no superheroes.
Yeah.
But he found a way to do it. So there's always a way to do it. Oh, look, here's these characters that everyone forgot because of some spell. And you can always do something to bring these characters back.
Progegaton? What is that? What was that villain? What was it?
I don't know. But the point is, they don't seem to be very much in favor of the current regime, which...
That's whatever. What are you going to do?
I understand. They're not...
What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
There's a whole host of books that you can get. I would actually consider, Starman's pretty much JSA story. I mean,
well, it's a single character,
right? But it's tied into the whole thing. It's part of the whole thing. It's like just like Superman's or JLA story. It exists.
I would seek out all of the JSA and Justice Society trades from
1999 on.
If there was a trade of that Parabec run, I would recommend it, but there will never be one. I can guarantee you that. Unless I'm ever put in charge of DC. In this case, DC will cease to exist in about 12 months after that.
Yeah, I was going to say, you'll be out of that job in about 6 months.
No, the company will be out of it. I will drive that.
The nail in the coffin.
It will be that Wikipedia entry.
Ken Burns' documentary of DC Comics. It'll be like, and then the Kilpatrick era.
All you put out was JSA titles.
So if you have some JSA characters that you're mourning, that you're going to miss, or maybe you agree with getting rid of them, come to the comments for this episode. Tell everyone what you think. It's all at iFanboy.com.
He had Darwin Cook draw everything.
Yeah, it'd be great. Darwin, listen, you got it. Come on.
He had guys drawing like Darwin Cook. It was crazy.
Go to iFanboy.com where you can comment on this episode. It's awesome.
You can email us at contact@ifanboy.com. Or if you draw like Darwin Cook, let us know. I'm going to need you in a few years.
I want to know what Doris Kearns Goodwin is going to say about Connor's time running DC Comics.
You can call our voicemail line at 888-FANBOY-326-2697.
You can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/iFanboy, where you can see all the stuff that's going on iFanboy.com throughout the day, as well as facebook.com/iFanboy, because this is a social networking world in which we live.
Right. And then the JSA just couldn't keep up.
They wouldn't even
Jay
know.
Garrick's like on the Facebooking with the kids and the MySpace. I can't do this.
He's from Williamsburg, is he?
Yeah, apparently.
Old Williamsburg.
Yeah.
Everybody back then was from New York.
Yeah.
At least Hollywood is who believed.
Yeah. I do want to see like the off scenes from the JSA where they're just like, oh, I went to the movies, $12. When I was a kid, it was a nickel.
Comics for old people.
That's your show.
There's your show.
There's your show.
Yeah, Killface fellas, your show.
There's your show.
There's your show right there. It's the best clip ever.
5 years.
It's so funny. No one remembers.
Why did we turn the air conditioner off?